In your bag, you should receive instructions on to make your hat and your belt, beads to put on the front of your hat, front and back mats for your hat, muslin to cover the back of the hat, belting, which is a white strip inside of the fabric, tassels, and fringe. First, you want to take a look at the directions and see what you need to cover the back of the hat with. And on these directions, it says cover back with Tahitian fabric, red and yellow print. So if you go to the fabric, a yellow flower was cut out to be used as the back of the hat. Next, you want to take the smallest piece of belting and cover it with your fabric, front and back. We chose to sew it. You can glue it as well. Next, you want to take your piece that you cut out for the back of the hat and a piece of matting. Flip it so the right side is down. Take your mat and place it on, and you're going to glue with tacky glue all along the sides so it is pulled tight across the front. Once you're finished, you should look something like this. Make sure you take close attention to the corners to make sure they're pulled tight and glued down well. To double check yourself, flip your hat over, make sure you're not bubbled anywhere. Good thing about tacky glue is you can slide it, move it around before it gets hard. Looks pretty good. And then I also had a lot of extra fabric, so I just cut off the extra pieces. You want as much space in the middle of the hat as you possibly can to be able to put the fringe on later. Now that the back of the hat is done, we're going to move on to the front. The front of the hat is covered with a muslin piece that should come with your kit. Simply put your muslin piece in the center, put your other half of your hat on top, and follow the same directions that you did for the back of the hat. Once you're done gluing, it should look a little something like this. Take a look at the front. You might see little buckles like this. You can take the back and pull it since your tacky glue is still a little wet. You want to try to get those bumps out of the hat until it's nice and smooth. Now that we have the back and front piece complete, along with our belting that will be put as our band, we're now going to move into preparing the fringes and attaching the belting to the hat. So first, you want to flip your back piece over, and we're going to attach the belting to the back piece. When you do this, you're going to want to make sure you're flush with the bottom and nice and straight. And you also want to make sure you are center within your belting. I'm going to take my tacky glue and make a huge section of tacky glue in this area, and then attach that onto there, and we're going to let it sit and dry. If you chose to glue your fabric on your belting, you probably have a spot where the fabric meets and it doesn't look solid like it does on here on both sides. If that's the case, you want to make sure that the side that comes together and meets and looks unfinished is facing the same way the back is facing, because when it goes on your daughter, this will be the back where it attaches, and you want the good side to be facing outside. So you want the rough side facing the same way as the good side of the back of the hat. Now that we have both the front and the back of the hat complete with the belt on, we're going to take a look at the directions again and make sure we get ready to do the fringes correctly. So along the outside here on the instructions, you can see what it tells you on fringes. It also tells you down here in the directions. This hat happens to have two different levels of fringes. So we've got a 1-inch yellow fringe and a 3-inch red fringe. The shorter fringe always goes in front of the long fringe. So this darker one in the front here will be your yellow fringe, and it's labeled over here. And then this longer one on the back will be your 3-inch red fringe. When doing a double fringe, it's easiest to do one fringe on the front of the hat and one fringe on the back of the hat. So in this case, we've got two fringes that we're working with. We've got our yellow and our red. Yellow is the 1, red is the 3 inches. We are first going to start with the yellow fringe, since that is our front 1-inch fringe. And what you're going to do is you're going to flip the front piece of your hat over, and you're going to be gluing everything to the back of the front piece of the mat. So you're gonna unbind your fringe. You're going to cut about 2 to 3 inch pieces of the fringe, and we're going to glue it all the way around the edge, giving it about 1.5, potentially even to 2 inches all the way around out here. You want to leave plenty of fringe on the outside because you're going to have some variation of the length as you go, and then when we're done, we're going to trim it. I'll show you how to trim it so you have a solid 1 inch all the way around and it looks nice and clean. A few things you're going to need when you're putting on the fringe of your hat. We use tacky glue. It's the easiest to squish the fringe into it, and it has a nice hold. And then I always find it easiest to apply the glue with a paintbrush, and if you wanted to put the glue in a little thing to dip the paintbrush in, you can. I also use my fingers and end up pushing it into the mat. You want to try to get the fringes as flat as you can in the mat, so when you go to glue your front and back pieces together, you don't have a bulky hat, that it's nice and thin. So as you can see, first I took from these long fringes, I cut them into smaller pieces, about 3.5 or so inches. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take little chunks starting on one side, and you want to lay it out to show. So here's the end of the hat. This is definitely more than an inch, but we want to make sure we give a solid 1.5 to 2 inches, because you can see there's some shorter ones here and some longer ones here, and when we cut it, we want it to all be the same. So this is going to be a good length to go all the way around our hat. So here's an example of the fringes started, and I'm going to do my next piece. So I put a large glob of glue on the hat, and I'm going to take my cut fringes and I'm going to lay them on the next section. And then I'm going to take my paintbrush and I push pretty hard so that way the glue squeezes through all the fringes. Take a little bit of the extra glue and paint the glue on over top. This makes sure that your fringes are nice and flat, because you want the fringes to be flat between the two hat pieces so it lays nice. And that's like that. Once it's complete, it should look a little something like this. As you can see, it's uneven right now, but once all this is dry, I'm gonna let it sit overnight. We can take a 1-inch piece of cardboard and we're gonna trim all along so it's even. Take a look at the front. That's what it should look like. You wanna make sure it's nice and thick. You want your pieces to lay straight. Make sure you don't have any pieces that are crimpled or tangled. And you should be good. Alright, so our yellow fringe has dried after it sat overnight. So now we're going to trim it down to 1-inch fringe. As you can see, we have pre-cut cardboard pieces that is 1 inch and 3 inches. So the yellow fringe is the 1 inch, so we're going to use the 1 inch, put the 3 inch to the side for the red fringe. And we're simply going to just take this, starting at the bottom, laying it flat, and then cutting the fringe right along the cardboard to get a nice even 1 inch fringe. Just like that. And then we're gonna go all the way around so we get to this side. And if you miss any pieces, you can just trim them off. But this way you get a nice clean 1 inch edge all the way around. Now we're going to move to the back piece of the hat where we're going to be putting our 3 inch red fringe. If we take a look at our directions, you can recap that it says 3 inches for red fringe, and it's going along the back side of it. So we're going to now attach the fringe to the back half of the hat. I folded these flaps in so you can see where the edges are of the hat, and to make it easier. And I made some fringe cuts over here. I made them between 5 and 5.5 inches, so that way we have plenty of room to glue it onto the hat, give some extra on the ends so we can trim it down to 3 inches so it looks nice and even. Once you have the fringes on, just like the front of the hat, it should look a little like this. And if we flip it over, here we go. While we wait for the red fringes to dry, we can attach the front mat to the back mat. So I put a bunch of glue all over the back mat, and we just need to make sure we line up the 2 mats. So if we look at them like this, we can make sure that they're matched up. Make sure it's flush across the bottom. And then press. I typically put books or some sort of weight on it so that way it can dry nice and flat. And then tomorrow, once that's dry and the fringes are dry, we can go ahead and cut the red fringes to a 3 inch fringe. So our hat has sat overnight, and as you can see, it's completely dry, and it has dried relatively flat, which is what we want. We want a nice flat hat. Now I'm going to just tuck in my straps here so that way I don't cut those accidentally, and we're going to cut the red fringe next. Now back in the beginning I had showed I had a 3 inch strip, so I'm going to take this 3 inch strip now and I'm going to line it up with the hat just like this, and then I'm going to end up cutting on the outside here all the way around until I get a nice 3 inch fringe as well. So your 3 inch fringe, it is not 3 inches from the yellow, it's 3 inches from the mat. As you can see now, after cutting all the way around with 3 inch fringe, I went around and just made sure I got all these little extra sniblets. You want to make sure the whole thing all the way around is nice and even. So you want to double check any little extra pieces. Doesn't help. It would help to just run your fingers through a little bit, pushing it outward. Sometimes that gets some pieces that were bent, and then you find longer pieces that you need to then cut, like right up here. So once that's complete, now your base of your hat is done, and you can get ready to put on your shells and decorations. So we're going to go back to our directions again and check out what our directions say. So let's see, we have, it says the shell necklace is going to be the outline. So if you look up here, this is the swirly outline right here. And so if we go back into our bag, this will be our shell outline. So we have that, and then we have center silk flowers. So these silk flowers in the middle here, the directions are out here then. So this middle bead is going out here. That's going to be the natural shell. That's going to be one of the bigger natural colored shells in the bag. Then it has the next flower will be the yellow flower, and the background flower is going to be the red flower. So we're going to take our red flower first in the background, then we're going to put our yellow flower on top with the natural shell color bead in the middle, and then we're going to also put the border of the shell necklace around the outside. And the last piece will be these yellow little shells. There's little yellow shells in the bag, and they're going to be going in the corners. So we're going to start with the shell necklace first. The shell necklace you're going to find in your bag. If you have a shell necklace outline, most likely it's going to be a complete necklace. On the picture, it says you're only going to be having it along the outside. So that means you're going to have to cut your necklace, which is no problem. So you're going to have to cut your necklace to the length that it needs to be able to border all the way around. And then you can either take tacky glue or hot glue to glue it on. Hot glue is quicker, but I believe tacky glue will hold it on a little bit better. Whichever you prefer and whatever you prefer to use is up to you. Both will work just fine. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this, glue it on, and then we'll move on to the flowers. So now I have half of the shells on the hat, and you can see I have my glue strip ready for the next half. Just wanted to show you that when you cut your necklace, make sure you take a few beads off and leave some extra string. So as you can see, I have a pile of beads left over from the necklace. You want to leave extra string and knot it off real close to the end. That way, just in case your beads would happen to come off of the hat when she's dancing or rehearsal or packing, that you don't lose the beads, that you would just lose the whole necklace altogether. So just be sure to knot each end before you go and glue it on. That way your necklace will still be intact if something were to happen to the beads. But now we're going to just simply place the rest of the necklace on the side. And you just want to pull it tight. You want to make sure that your point is up on the point and not starting to curl or curve. And then just reposition it. Now with hot glue, it would not have any give or be able to readjust, but then also it wouldn't keep sliding. So as my tacky glue dries, I'm just going to keep trying to straighten it out just so that way it has a nice straight line all the way around, and then we'll move on to the silk flowers. So moving on to the silk flowers, we had a red flower on the bottom and then a yellow flower on the top, like our directions said. So we're going to take our yellow flower first. You want to make sure your petals are going to be up. You don't want it to be flat laying down like that. You want them to be popping up so it's nice and vibrant and looking sharp on the hat. So our red flower is going to be there, and then we're going to take our yellow flower and just alternate it. You don't want it to be overlaying exactly the same way. So you're going to want the petals to be alternating right about like that. And then see how the petals are flipping over without glue. So make sure when you go to glue it, you glue the petals down as well, not just the center, so that way it lays nice and flat. Now that our flowers are glued on, we're going to move on to the beads that have to go on them. So if we recap to our directions, it says that there's a natural shell in the middle, and then there are 2 yellow shells on the side. So if we look at these, this is your natural shell, and then you've got 2 small yellow shells that we're going to put on. Take notice that the bead in the middle is sideways, so we're going to make sure we put this bead long, not up and down, so long ways. And then you can see that on these directions, it's got the point going into the middle, so we're going to make sure we do that with these beads. We're going to make sure the point goes into the middle. Let's move this, and we're going to place our first bead in the middle, so it's going to be right about there. And then you're going to take the yellow beads and have them pointing up. Have them pointing up, and they have them in the corner. And then you should be able to look at the diagram and look at the hat, and it should look just about the same. Then I'm going to glue these on, and then your hat will be complete once it's dried.
The hat is dry and looking fantastic, and you only have 2 more things that I suggest that you do to the hat before your daughter is ready to wear it for performance. First, I recommend getting heavy-duty Velcro, and this Velcro will go on either ends of your belting strip that goes around your daughter's head. I would use E6000 glue to glue it fast, and let this glue dry overnight so it can adhere well. That way when she goes to pull on and off before and after performances, it's not pulling off of the fabric. So you're going to need heavy-duty Velcro, and then I would also recommend getting a sticky foam, like that insulator foam that you can put in windows and things. You take the sticky side off of one side, put it on the back of the mat. That way it would be touching your daughter's forehead. And this would allows a more comfortable feeling of the hat, and it creates almost like a suction and allows a little bit of give with your hat, but much more comfort, and hopefully it would stay better while she's dancing. I hope you enjoyed, and I can't wait to see all the fabulous hats at recitals and competitions.